Well, I had the pleasure of working with Susan Mabey, who was the former principal at Dominion Trail Elementary School a few years ago. And Susan had contacted me about this dynamic male teacher that was part of the PDS program in her school. Marlon was a graduate of George Mason doing his internship at Dominion Trail. And Susan had reached out to the colleagues in the cluster and said, you guys have to interview this young man. And so I contacted him the next day and had him come over to Cedar Lane for a visit and a conversation. And we had a very dynamic conversation. I knew immediately, probably within the first 3 minutes, that this was going to be a dynamic teacher, an excellent teacher, just because of, one, his character and integrity, but two, he brought a passion and an energy with him, which was pretty unlike I had seen from a lot of teachers during the year that I was interviewing. I asked him to be part of the Cedar Lane team, and it was one of the best decisions I think I've ever made in terms of hiring staff, because I knew that day he was going to be great, and I figured it'd take him at least 5 years. But shortly after coming on board, he demonstrated that excellence from the very beginning, and I'm really excited about that and happy that he's now with us here at Discovery. It's been really wonderful to watch his growth. And I'll tell you why, because Marlon is a learner. He is the type of individual who is never settled. You know, he wants to know more, he wants to learn, he has this desire to really be a master teacher. And in order to be a master teacher, first you've got to have that passion. That's something that you've got to want, and you have to know how to go about doing it. But he's always asking the right questions. He's very thoughtful about his work. He's very intentional in terms of what he does in his classroom, whether it's with his students, whether it's with his parents. And every year I see that intentionality grow and become, more part of just his overall, teaching. And I know that this summer he's going to be he's trying to enroll in a Center for Teaching Excellence, working on some STEM work. And again, that's another example of how he's never settled with where he is today, always thriving and striving to be the best possible teacher that he can be. So it's been very exciting for me to watch that, from a young, brand new teacher with that energy to one who's grown over the past 3 years with even more energy. The passion, I think, is greater today than it was 3 years ago. Marlon is one of those teachers that parents request that their kids be in the classroom, because they know walking out of his classroom, they will have gotten a quality education, but more importantly, he will have helped them to develop good character. And to me, that's a significant part of teaching, and Marlon understands that.
Right.
Actually, that was, I believe that was this year.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I believe it was this year. There was a parent who said that her family was not accustomed to having a male teacher. Her daughter had grown up, and all of her teachers had been female. And she was very concerned about that. She was very concerned about her interactions with Mr. Mohammed. And I said, trust me, you will love him. It will only take you a short while to realize that he is different. He's unique. He will have you eating out of the palm of his hands very quickly. And she wasn't very trusting. She questioned that. She was a little reluctant, but I finally convinced her that this was the right placement for her daughter, and her daughter loves Mr. Mohammed. And the mom, as a matter of fact, when we had one of our events back in October, the mom did come up to me and said, "Thank you, Mr. Dallas." She apologized for not trusting at the time, but she was very thankful that, I was honest with her in terms of the type of teacher that her daughter would be getting. But she loves Mr. Mohammed, as all of his parents do. She, will volunteer to do anything for his classroom. Her daughter adores Mr. Mohammed, just like all of the kids do. So when I say that to a parent, I really mean it, and I know when especially when it comes to Marlon, if I say trust me about a certain teacher, then I want them to do that, because I know it's the right thing, and it's going to be a great experience for their child. Well, I think it's crucial. It's unfortunate, I believe, that we don't have a lot of males in the profession. So I went out and actively sought male teachers here at Discovery. I think it's good for the boys in that they have an opportunity to see a positive role model in the teaching profession. Men, I think, for a very long time felt like, we have to be the breadwinners. We have to, bring home all the money, and teaching was not one of those professions where you could make a lot of money. But I think now we're seeing more men go into it because they realize that it's a job where you can certainly have a significant influence over all children, not just males, but females as well. But have this significant influence over them and how they think and how they act and how they view and perceive men in today's society. So while I think it's important for males to see that, I think young ladies, it really helps the young ladies too, because they begin to look at males very differently than what they've been told. How they've been taught that the types of jobs that males should have, and they have a better sense of the male teacher and his role in education. I mean, for a very long time too. Mostly it was women who dominated education, but now we've got a lot more men going into this profession, and I think it's a great thing. I mean, I think we need more. I'd love to see more men in the profession. Right now, we're fortunate to have a man at grades 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm only missing kindergarten and first grade. But it was very important to us to really go out and deliberately seek those men and get them here in the building. And they've all done a fantastic job. Marlon actually serves as the team leader for his collaborative learning team, third grade collaborative learning team. And his team also looks to him for some leadership because they know that he has done his work. He's done his homework prior to all those meetings. And he brings in a great deal of experience, and he has great knowledge, depth of knowledge about the content for which he is responsible for teaching. He reads. He's well versed on latest trends in education. He knows the curriculum very well. I mean, this is his 4th year, at third grade, so he knows the curriculum well. And for that reason, his team does look to him because he's experienced it. He knows what kinds of activities to design for the children at that grade level. And plus, Marlon also has a lot to say. He's he loves to talk, and his teammates will tell you the same thing. He loves to talk. He has a lot to say, and sometimes we have to, get him to, kind of step back a little bit and let somebody else speak. But he is a natural-born leader, and people do look to him for that kind of leadership. And John's absolutely right. Even in some of those opportunities that have been presented to him at the central level, Marlon is always willing to step up and share his knowledge, and so people expect that from him. Well, first, it's a humbling experience because the passion that he brings to the profession, you see it in his teaching. I mean, he takes those kids on as his own, right? He calls them my little friends. These are my little friends. These are my little guys. And he gets very emotional about that. When we sit here in my office and we talk about his friends, he gets very emotional about it because he loves every last one of them, and he recognizes how humbling it is for him to be in this profession and to have this kind of influence. But to walk in his room, so you see that, but you also see this engagement. You see the kids, everybody wants to participate. You see his friendly demeanor. You see experiences, unlike you might see in other classrooms where, the kids have opportunities to demonstrate their learning in so many different ways. You see Marlon, peering over a small group. You see him standing in front of the class, orchestrating, coordinating, doing all the things that master teachers do. He designs experiences in his classroom that I think any principal would be thrilled to see, because we talk a lot about engagement. We talk a lot about the kids being connected to the classroom. You walk in there, you see this family. You see a group of third graders who care about one another. You see a group of kids who look out for one another, who protect one another. And that's not at their own doing. That's because Marlon has created that kind of community within that classroom. So it's like a family. You walk in, you see this family. There may be 27 or 28 kids in there, but it's one large family with their leader that they all look to. And so it's exciting to walk into his classroom. It's exciting to see the technology that he incorporates. He uses a lot of technology, and he teaches his children how to actually access the technology to demonstrate their learning in multiple ways. So it's almost like a demonstration site. I would use his classroom as clearly an example of a demonstration site of what good teaching should look like. So for me, it's very wonderful to see that. Well, it wasn't in the classroom. It was a conversation that he and I were having at the end of my stay at Cedar Lane. We were talking about the children, and his experience with the children over the course of the year, and he got very emotional because he was losing. It was like, his kids were going off to college. He wouldn't have them the next year. And he was very concerned about that. He felt so strongly that he had created within that class, again, this family, this family unit, and he didn't want that bond to be broken. He was worried about where he was sending them for the next year. So as we're talking, you could see the emotion all over his face. It was, I'm losing my babies. I'm losing my friends. I'm losing this group of kids that I've become so close to and so affectionate towards. And he got really emotional in my office and was concerned about whether or not all of the things that he had taught them, would they carry that with them the next year. And it was more than just the reading, writing, and arithmetic. It was being a good person, standing up for the little man. It was advocating for your friends. It was being a good team player. All of those attributes that we all think are important for our kids beyond the academics. He had spent so much time doing that, and that was so much a part of who he was then and who he is now, that greatly concerned him. So I sat back in my chair and I just watched him, and in amazement, but also humbled myself, realizing that I was in the presence of what we all, as principals, as educators, feel is the epitome of great teaching. And that's someone who understands it, who gets it, who knows what this work is all about. And it's not always just the science part of teaching, it's the art of teaching. That to me is what separates the good from the great. It's someone who understands the art of teaching, and Marlon understands the art of teaching. Yeah, you can know the curriculum, but how do you connect kids to the curriculum? Teachers know, yeah, I've got to contact my parents, but how do you get parents to want to be connected to you and to your classroom so that they feel part of that? So that conversation just solidified for me the type of individual that Marlon is as an educator and as a person, and that's who he is today. And I'm as proud of him today as I was when we interviewed him, 4 years ago. Oh yeah, he does. He does. As a matter of fact, he went over to, he goes over to Cedar Lane occasionally. He has gone out to some of the social events, where he knows that some of his former kids are going to be. Some of the kids contact him. They still stay in touch with him. Some of the parents still stay in touch with him. Marlon, just because you're not in his classroom anymore, doesn't mean that you're not part of the family. Marlon's like the mafia. Once you're part of the family, you're always a part of the family. And that's a wonderful thing. I've been in this business for 26 years, and I think for me the most gratifying thing is when your kids that you taught many, many years ago, they pick up the phone and they call you or send you an email. I anticipate that, we look 10, 15 years down the road, the students that Marlon taught during his first year who will have graduated from college and they're, out in the real world making their own way, they will pick up the phone and call him and thank him for being the type of teacher that he was, but more importantly, the type of person that he was, sort of grounding them in experiences that they could take for a lifetime. So yeah, I mean, he's always connected to his families and to his kids. I don't see him in the classroom. I see him doing something, maybe in technology. He loves technology. Marlon really thrives off technology. He loves leadership. So I see him in some leadership role, whether it's in technology or maybe something central office where he's working with teachers to help them improve, their own teaching. I think he has a skill set that needs to be shared, with other people. And sometimes you're not able to do that, within the confines of a classroom or a building. I think he really wants to influence the profession as a whole, and sometimes feels like he can't do that, being in one classroom. So I see him really, taking on some leadership position within the county, perhaps in staff development. I know that he has a great working relationship with John O'Connor. John's been a great influence on Marlon and a great role model for him. So it's possible that we may see him there one day, and it wouldn't surprise me because I know that he certainly has the capacity to lead in that way. So, unfortunately, it won't be in the classroom, but sometimes you have to spread your wings, right, and do things that you may not have set out to do. But he's so talented that I see him doing something really great. I think it's been gradual. I think each year he has come into his own. I think each year he recognizes that he is gifted with certain attributes as a teacher, and that he has this calling to share that with other people. So I do believe it's been gradual. I don't think there was a seminal moment. I just think every year he is just recognizing what he's been gifted with, and he wants to share that. He wants to share that with people, and I encourage him to do it. I'm of the belief that you never hold anybody back from their dreams and their hopes and their goals. And Marlon's a dreamer. He has a lot of goals for himself, and he's going to work hard to make sure that those come through. But he also understands that it's a process. These things don't happen overnight, and that's why I think that his walk is very intentional and it's very deliberate. Everything that he does is all about lining himself up for this greater cause that's awaiting him, in the very near future.